Hello, I'm PJ Bishop. Welcome to my channel and the ongoing series with the Oakland A's. The season has finally come to an end. We finished 63 and 99. So one thing we did avoid was at least losing 100 games. It was kind of a funny end to the season. Seattle, who was 80 and 81 at the time, and we were 62 and 99 at the time. Even though we weren't going anywhere as a collective group, they weren't going to make the playoffs, and we were obviously eliminated as well. Seattle had a chance to not finish with a losing record, and we obviously had a chance to not lose 100 straight or lose 100 games, which would have been, out of curiosity, which would have been a fourth straight season with 100 losses. So luckily we ended it a slight improvement. Now, yes, it's a slight improvement, although it doesn't seem like much with the actual results. I do feel like the team is better as a whole. I think a lot of the guys are coming back next year and will be better. Or the guys that we brought up this year from the minors are going to start off next year in our lineup from the start to finish. And of course, we have the offseason to address some of our biggest needs, which right now is the starting rotation. I mean, if you look at the starting rotation, Ken Waldachek eventually brought himself back down to a respectable ERA at 4.91, which isn't terrible. Last year he played a little bit. So he only played in AAA last year? Oh, no, he was back from an injury. So it's respectable. It's enough to bring him back as a starter and let him go at it again. He's only minor as far as his arbitration is concerned. So tell me how much it is. I have to look at the actual salaries. Yeah, $1.8 million is not ridiculous. JP Sears, once again, kind of our most consistent pitcher, even though nothing impressive at 4th year. But this is back-to-back seasons of putting in a lot of work. At least 3. Let's see how many seasons in a row. So 3 seasons in a row, he's got at least 170 plus innings. So he really is putting in the work. And it's very consistent. He's an average guy. That's where he is. Nothing outstanding. He's going to provide you average work. I don't really want to see him as high. I don't need him being your number 2 starter is always a bad sign. Colin Wiles, I believe this was his first time really coming in. It was a trade from New York. He had an on and off season, but there's a complete game there. I almost had a complete game here. Ended up taking him out. So he does go deep into games. And every now and then he'll provide you with something that's, I think he was actually the starter in the final game that sent us, the second to final game. But not bad. He did okay with the Yankees in an all but limited role. But this year, for us, he did okay. Even though he is old, but he's cheap. And I don't see why I wouldn't bring him back next year, as he seems to be consistent enough to probably earn a starting role next year. Freddie Tarnock was extremely disappointing. Now, I think it's because I'm going to blame it to rust. I think he only played in 2 innings last year. Yeah, played in about 2 innings before getting hurt. But this year, not impressive at all. Every now and then he had some promising games, but then he had some just terrible games. I mean, look at the earned runs. He's given up a run in almost every game. Barely lasted this game. Again, I can't have you lasting 3 innings and 1.2 innings because you're putting so much stress on my bullpen, which is not a talented group of bullpen guys anyway. Colin Muller, after having a decent year last year, major drop-off this year. I feel like he's still good enough to give him one more go-around, but it is very close to being gone as far as continuing to be a member of this rotation. Will he move to the bullpen? Maybe. Will he move down to the minor leagues? Possibly. But things aren't looking good for him for his future here in Oakland. The bullpen, what did his stats actually look like? Looks like our home runs started to increase as we put in heavier hitting guys. Finished at 13th there. Offense is still anemic, although I think next year if it come back healthy and ready to go, is going to look good. Bullpen did finish top 5 in the ERA as the starters finished last. So definitely need to bring in a better starting rotation. Defense dropped off toward the end of the year. I think that's mainly to do with losing some of our top defenders for about a month, month and a half, 2 months if you count their extended rehab assignment. But at least we didn't commit too many errors. In fact, we led. It's weird saying it that way. We led the league in errors. We didn't really lead the league in it, but we led the league in the least amount of errors. Is the more, I guess, correct way of saying it. But that should be better next year as we keep getting guys that are better and better at defensively and offensively too. So that's that. So we only had a few minor transactions. Left fielder Lazaro Armentoros was optioned to AAA Las Vegas. That was to make room for second baseman Daryl Hernandez. And then on September 30th, right before the season ended, left fielder Seth Brown was placed on the 15-day back spasms. It wasn't a big injury. It was more like a day-to-day thing, but it opened up his roster spot. And with nothing to play for, I ended up just shutting him down for the rest of the year. Shortstop Nick Allen and second baseman Nick Ahmad both activated from the IL. And I ended up sending down center fielder Denzel Clark. I optioned him to AAA. He wasn't getting playing time. And with Nick coming back, I was able to move Nick to shortstop, move Mauricio back to center field. We still had Esteury Ruiz as an option at center field, so we were doing a good job. So we really need Denzel Clark, although I would prefer to see him in my lineup next year as a starter. Let's take a look at the lineup and how they actually finished. How did some of my best players finish? So the best player based off of as you can see here, I'm getting ready to scout these guys. I want to scout them so I can figure out who to send to the development lab. And I think it worked that way. Last year I was kind of trying it out because my goal is to get them as highly scouted as possible, as closest to the development lab as possible. This way I can figure out what they actually need to work on, if they need to work on anything, and things of that nature. But according to the OPS, Daryl Hernandez was my best. Not according to WAR, though, but according to the OPS, it was Daryl Hernandez. Really good looking. He's dropped a little bit, as you can see here. Dropped down to 45. He used to be 50. His contact can still improve a little bit. He doesn't have much power, but he's good on the bases, and he's a good. Looks like he's lost a little bit of his outfield. He doesn't play as much left field, so that makes sense. Looks like he's strictly a second fielder moving forward. Didn't finish quite with the 300 ERA. 300 average. I wish he did. Finished with 296, which isn't bad. His year, what did he finish with? 296. Ended up with 43 stolen bases. Only got caught stunned 5 times. That's a huge. Look at his improvement from last year. Went from 237 to 296. Just improved all the way across the board. So very, very good to see him grow in his second season and become a really good member and a valuable asset to this team. So nice to see that he was our best when it came to that. Tyler Soderstrom is somebody I'm really excited about because he's got power. He can still develop a little bit better contact-wise, but he is someone that I'm looking forward to. He ended up finishing with 22 home runs in just 96 games, which I think is pretty remarkable because he's playing first base / DH. He has the potential to easily play 150, 155 games, which should make his ability to hit home runs increase as well because he's going to be in more games, more opportunities, so more home runs hit. What was his combined home run total this year? 34 home runs combined. Not bad. Next year, I'm hoping he develops into a solid 250 average for 40 homers a year kind of guy. Whether it's at first base or DH, he's definitely got a spot on his roster for years to come. Zach Gelof, as you remember, he's one of my favorite guys. Currently locked up, but he's starting to look more and more solid. He's a solid player. He's really solid all around. What he gets 70 stolen bases this year. A little drop off from last, but as you can see, he led the AL in stolen bases for the second straight season. with 70. So pretty impressive mark there. So back-to-back years. Less stolen bases this year than last, even though he's getting on base more. So that's actually interesting. And higher average, higher on base, but yet 20 less stolen bases in more games too. So that is really interesting. But he's a valuable part of this member, and he's good on defense. I like the fact that he's good on defense. And then Max Muncy, the rookie that got to see some time in September, not a bad start to his career. Here he is. I started putting him at first base more. He's actually a really good first baseman. He can be just as good second baseman. He could still be a solid third baseman. He could be left field, but it looks like if I put him in first base, he'd be considered a really good player. There you are. There's his stats. Finished with a pretty decent stat line there. A slash line, considering that he is just turned 23. His birthday being in August. So a very young guy, still a prospect. So be excited to see what he does moving forward. I think he still qualifies as a rookie next year. He's only got 78 at-bats, only been on a major league roster for 35 days. I'm fairly certain that qualifies you for a rookie. So if he has a pretty good year next year, be on the lookout for him in the Rookie of the Year contention. And obviously, he's a really patient guy. I think, look at that. Walked 13 times. I remember in several games, his on-base percentage is pretty good, 352. Not bad. He's not a slugger right now, but he can develop into a slugger. He's got the power. So he does have power to play first base. He could play second, obviously. So it'll be interesting to figure out where to move him and how to get all my players involved. Because we have such a good-looking team now. To me. I mean, I know they're not ridiculously talented, but they're getting up there, in my opinion. As a whole, they can work well. Then Esteury Ruiz had a really solid season. When he did come up, much better than last year. The year before, he was, this is much better. Now, I don't know if he can repeat this because there's nothing offensively. He's not that great. Defensively at left field is really good. Even his range and air is what keeps him good at right field. But he's probably a good center. But I'd rather see Denzel Clark step up and play better. Because outside of his ability to play all the outfield positions, his main weapon is his legs. But if he can't get on base, it doesn't really matter. So I don't know if this year was just a fluke and he just happened to hit a little better, or if it was more things to come. I don't think I have to trade him. We'll see where he goes now. It'll be difficult. The offseason is going to be a little difficult for us. Then, of course, J.J. Bleday. Great season. He's a power guy. Gap power and power, and he's got good eye. He's one of my better hitters. Finished with 26 home runs. Not a good average. As you can see, his contact is below average, but his home run power is where it's at. He's a slugger. 26 home runs, 26 stolen bases. So the 2020 club, he made that. Who led us in home runs? Oh, Seth Brown's injured. That's why I don't see him here. Let's go look and see what Seth Brown ended up doing. Seth Brown finished with 29 home runs, so he didn't get that 30. It's unfortunate. At one point, he was on pace to get 30, and he didn't get his 20 stolen bases, so he's not part of that exclusive. I say exclusive. I mean, I never looked at the exact numbers of how many guys actually get it, but part of that 2020 club. He was close, but no cigar. How did Mason Miller end up finishing? Mason Miller, so he's going to go down with a really good ERA as it ends with a 1.73. I wonder if he does not qualify for a league leader. It's unfortunate that he suffered an injury and is still out for a while, 6 more months. I guess he was finally playing really well. But we can actually look at our roster and see what we got going for us, at least position-wise. Like I said, our catcher is pretty much set. Shea Langeliers should be the catcher. Carson Kelly is a solid backup because he's good defensively. Don't know how much offense he's going to provide. He did okay this year. He was on fire at one point. He started off the year really great, but kind of fell off toward the end. But if his defense can stay relatively close to this, he'll be a good enough asset next year as a solid backup. Our first base is now getting a little more complicated because Armando's pretty decent at 31. Brett Harris is pretty decent. He's only 27. Max Muncy is obviously good, and so is Tyler. I mean, I almost feel like I can go with Max and DH Tyler, and then these guys are just kind of coming off the bench or sent down to the minors or traded. A lot of this, like I said, the decision making is going to be tough this offseason. Second baseman, it's going to be probably Daryl Hernandez. He's going to stay. And then, of course, Nick Ahmed. I got to decide what to do with him. He's a solid backup, but after I signed him, his drop off was significant enough to where I don't know if I want to keep him around, to be honest. I have to try to figure out if I can trade him. I'm not really sure. I might have to waive him to start next year. I don't know. Not too excited with that because he's dropped off a lot. Our third base, as you can see here, we got. I mean, he's going to get sent off. He's not going to be my 40-man next year. But Zach Geloff is the clear third baseman right now. No reason why he can't continue with the production he provides all across the board. His main, where his value comes in is the fact that he's good enough here. He's good enough in the on bases, and he's good enough defensively to be valuable. And as long as you keep leading the league in steals, you're gonna be rostered. Shortstop. This is where I come to another crossroad. Max Muncy is only average defender at short, so I probably don't want to move Max Muncy to a full-time short. But Nick Allen he's got to improve offensively to make his really good defense valuable. He should be hitting better. I don't know why he doesn't hit better, because his avoid case is really high and his contacts is above average. Batted balls in play, though. Which is weird. I'm not really sure how that works. If this is good and this is good, why wouldn't this be? It's weird. It really is weird. So he puts balls into play, but there aren't going to be hits. He doesn't strike out, but is able to make contact at an above average rate. It's kind of weird. Kind of weird. I guess if you're a ground ball hitter, it makes sense because you're always hitting to ground balls are more likely than not outs. Just kind of weird. Like, why have this and then have this so terrible? Because it's really affecting his potential. As you can see, his average and on-base percentage are very low. So is his slugging. Everything about him is low. Still a positive WAR. Does it take into effect defense? He can hit on the AAA level. It's weird. Down there, he's a stud. Up here, he sucks. But still, with his defense, I think he finds value as our shortstop. Left fielder is where we get a little bit of a. We got Lazarus. Seth Brown is probably still the starting left fielder due to the power. As long as you can keep hitting home runs, it's hard to take you out of the lineup. Center fielder Mauricio Dubon is still good enough to be the center fielder, although defensively he's fine. He's starting to hopefully he doesn't drop off too much. Denzel Clark is who I really would rather have as my center fielder because of his power. I need guys that have power. He's got potential to have power and speed. Because he does it well at the AAA level. He just can't seem to get it together up here. Last year, he's actually got worse this year. As far as skill level wise, he's dropped down. Went from what looked like a promising beginning to where it kind of reminds me of Jordan Walker. But he's got the skill set to be good. I think if he just can pull it together, and he's valuable defensively. He's a really good left fielder, a good center fielder, a really good right fielder. And he's dangerous on the base pass. We just got to get him to play better. And our right fielder is probably still J.J. Bleday, again, because of his power ability. As long as you have power output, it's hard to replace you. But Lars Butler is another one of those guys where I would like to see you become my main player here. As you can see at AAA, he was an absolute stud. And looks like he should be okay offensively if he can just reach his potential, because he can steal bases at a really high clip. He's a really good defender in right field. Right field is his home, but he can play left as well. He did not play for me last year, but the year before, he played for the different leadership. For me, he was AAA all year long. Good numbers in AAA, just wasn't needed quite yet in the majors this year. He did get a little taste. Not a good debut for him. So hopefully, and I think he burned through his rookie status because of the major league service time. So he's not even considered a rookie because of how much time he spent on the actual active roster. So that is that. Again, like I said, we got some work to do to figure out who goes where and what they do. A lot of work to do. Let's see how did our AAA team finish? A AAA team finished 500, actually 75 and 75, which is, I believe, an improvement from last year. Just interesting to see who we got here. Some of the names we recognize. They've been on and off. What am I doing? Double A team finished pretty bad. Last place in their division, 58 and 80, 18.5 games out of first place. Just not good. High A team went from champions to last place, 55 and 77. They should be better next year, I think, when some of the younger guys that I had develop a little better. This happens because I'm sure those high A guys went on to Double A. Low A team finished 69 and 63. They got swept in the first round by Fresno, actually. They were at one point much better, but a lot of the top players from here graduated and moved on to high A. So you kind of saw a pretty big drop off. And then the Arizona Complex, they finished 36 and 13 and won. No, they lost the championship game, didn't they? Yes, I think we lost 4-3 here, actually. So they weren't the champions this year. They ended up losing in the championship. And then Dominican Summer League, they finished 38 and 22, 4 games outside of the division, and just 2 games outside of a wildcard spot. So, but back-to-back seasons, they had a winning record, and I think finished second in their division. So the Summer League team is looking good. They actually ended up losing all their starting pitching, is moving on to the next level. Only 3 players from the starting lineup are actually moving on to the state side. So that tells you that a lot of these guys have a lot of improving to do. Now they might end up moving up, but majority of them are going to end up staying here. So look for them to be much better next year. What do we have as far as playoff coverage? I'm sure some of you are interested. So there you are. So the Baltimore Orioles and the Detroit Tigers are going to have the bye weeks, or the byes in the AL. The Atlanta Braves and the Los Angeles Dodgers will have the bye in the NL. Then you have Tampa, 3 from the same division again. You're going to have Tampa and New York Yankees fight it out in the wild card. And then you have the Chicago White Sox, from one of the worst teams to a playoff team. So that gives me hope against the Houston Astros. And out in the NL, we have Philadelphia against St. Louis. And then you have the Arizona Diamondbacks against the Pittsburgh Pirates. I believe it was it Baltimore, or I think it was Atlanta that won it last year, wasn't it? I believe so. Does it tell me? Someday I'm going to have a team just like theirs. Yes, they won the World Series last year. It's actually interesting. So that's it. That is what we got going on. I think the next video after this will be going over the playoff coverage and figure out who is crowned the 2025 World Series champions.